As we have seen, Oliver Napoleon Hill did not have much success when it came to business, and his stories about the movers and shakers of industry was seen as tall tales. But for the very first time, Hill would put pen to paper, and it would end with his first successful endeavor. Come along with us as Hill becomes a successful author. All aboard the Kentucky Tennessee Living Time Machine. Please fasten your seatbelts and keep your arms and legs inside of the vehicle at all times. But to get going, we need your help. We still need to fire up that time machine to transport us. Please help us by clicking on the like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons down below. Not only does this fire up the time machine for our flight back in time, but it convinces the YouTube algorithm that we need a bigger vehicle to reach more people who love history as much as you do. Now, back to our story. Meeting Andrew Pelton. In 1925, Hill began to write his book, The Law of Success, which was claimed to be heavily influenced by the conversations and friendship with Don Mellett. Donald Mellett, the Ohio newspaper publisher, was assassinated by nefarious people said to be connected with the mob of that time. During the year of 1928, Oliver Hill relocated to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. While he was there, he convinced a Connecticut-based publisher named Andrew Pelton to publish his 8-volume work called The Law of Success. Hill knew he could not walk up to Pelton in his broke status and expect him to believe that he had the secret to a successful lifestyle. Hill also knew that Pelton, like himself, was a believer in the prosperity self-help movement. Pelton's first New Thought publishing success came from the 1919 Power of Will by Frank Channing Haddock. This book was believed to have impacted Hill's later works. The idea of the New Thought philosophy was to have a very direct and material action upon the world using only your mind. That, if you were positive in this line of thinking, that you would add prosperity and riches to your own life. Like any movement, there was disagreement among its leaders as to how this idea should be taught to others, but Napoleon Hill would be one of its most influential leaders to come. But for now, Hill had to come up with a plan. The plan. As we have stated, Hill could not just walk up to Pelton in this apparent poverty. In fact, he was completely broke. Hill knew that he had to face Pelton as the epitome of style, grace, charm, and above all, success. So, everything about him had to change. Hill's finances at that time were so dire that his wife's family had to take up the slack and pay for the expenses of Florence and her children. It is thought that Hill abandoned his family at this time in his life, as his wife and sons were all living with Florence's mother. Hill would show up for short stints to basically ask for more money, then he would leave again. Hill did write a letter to his wife, according to the blog, The Untold Story of Napoleon Hill, the greatest self-help scammer of all time. In this letter, Hill promised his wife that he would, quote, buy a country home for you out of the first accumulation, and then we will begin to store a goodly sum of the remainder in the bank, so that I will never again be in the position of having to accept alms as I did last year. I am cured of that forever, unquote. Anticipating the arrival of Pelton, first, Hill went to his brother-in-law and borrowed a huge sum of money. With this money, he rented an enormous hotel suite in the most prestigious hotel in Philadelphia. He started flashing huge wads of cash around the hotel lobby and lavishly tipped every bellboy and hotel clerk that he happened to come across. He changed his manner of dress to equal the status that he wanted to portray. This idea worked for Hill, as he was able to capture Pelton's attention. After showing Pelton the writings he had done, Pelton agreed to publish it. There are those that think that the work is a compilation of incomplete ideas and a mishmash of garbled thoughts and wonder why the book was even published. Even those that are on Hill's side of the fence admit that the book was not very well written. But as a first literary try by Hill, it had amazing success, but not at first. Hill's success. This would be Hill's first successful endeavor. But the royalties that did come in at first were pretty meager. It took a year for the book to finally find its audience. Once the book was found by its readers, it took off quickly from the shelves. What is considered to be the success of the book was the fact that Hill relied on his stories about famous people that he met over the years. Even though many had the idea that Hill was a lunatic, the idea that these powerful men thought highly of him added a huge credibility to the book. It added to the imagination of those that were reading the book that these men truly were giving good advice, and it helped to imagine a life on a grander scale. The money started rolling in at this point. The book sale royalties were averaging $2,500 a month, or in today's money, according to the U.S. inflation calculator, $46,649.42. For the first time in his life, Hill no longer had to pretend that he was successful and had lots of money to spend. However, Hill was not thrifty with his money and lived a very opulent lifestyle. By 1929, he drove a Rolls Royce and owned a 600-acre or 240-hectare property in the Catskills Mountains named Shagbark, which he, with the help of lenders, was able to purchase. True to his personality, Hill had a grand idea of turning the property into the world's first university-sized success school. As part of this plan, 2 additional lakes and a clubhouse would be added to attract the rich and the famous to the property. According to the same blog, quote, eventually they intended to also build and sell vacation homes on the grounds for successful people who wanted to mix traditional vacation pleasures with the opportunity to brush up on the principles which would enhance their continued success, unquote. His biographers would later write, unquote. By July of that year, Hill had reconciled with his wife Florence and his sons. They moved onto the property by July of 1929, and it would be the first time that all 5 family members would be under the same roof. Hill was hard at work making his dream into a reality. But boredom set in as Hill was a man constantly on the move. So that year, Hill went on a speaking tour. By the autumn of that year, Hill had an office in New York City. Hard times. From September to October 1929, the Great Depression began in the United States. Hill's finances took a major hit during that time, even though he denied it. The property in the Catskills Mountain went into foreclosure in the mid 1930s. Florence and her sons moved back with her family in Lumberport, West Virginia, to live from their generosity. However, Hill did write to his wife often, letting her know that he was currently writing another book and that success would be theirs once again. Hill would indeed publish his second book. His sophomore effort was not as successful, though. The book, The Magic Ladder to Success, did not sell and was considered to be a flop. But ever the optimist and dreamer, Hill would not give up. He would write to his wife in a letter that there was a possibility that the book, Law of Success, would be made into a movie so that the masses could get the message that Hill was trying to spread. His idea was to offer scholarships to high school students that could come up with the best way to turn the book into a movie. From the same blog source, quote, we plan to organize a sales force and take the contest to all the high schools all over the country, unquote, Hill wrote. Quote, if I get it over, it will make me rich in a year. If I do not, I might go to jail. The idea is that every contestant would need the Law of Success textbooks in order to get ideas from them for the contest, unquote. While it is unclear of what Hill meant by the statement that he might go to jail, there were several possibilities. One of which is that Hill was afraid that his past illegal activities might catch up to him. Or another possibility could have been that it was possible that setting up a contest for the sole purpose of selling his book and making it into a movie was illegal. Hill was always dancing on the tightrope between brilliant marketing and fraud. The Corianton Corporation. Needless to say, the law of success was never made into a movie. But the movie bug did bite Oliver Hill in 1930. Hill met his Mormon protege, Lester Park, and together they formed a movie production company named the Corianton Corporation. Hill had dreamed up the financing scheme of selling unlicensed stock with the purpose of producing a film. While Park was sincere in this part of the company, it seems that Hill's out of the box tactics got them both in trouble with the state of New York. As the newspaper excerpt reads from the blog, quote, "Court halts talkie stock sale for a Mormon movie." A corporation formed to promote a talking motion picture based on the legendary first white inhabitants of America, whose story is told through the prophecies of Mormons, has been temporarily enjoined from further dealings in its stock. It was announced today at the State Bureau of Securities. Supreme Court Justice Johnston had already signed an order requiring the firm, the Corianton Corporation of 160 West 44th Street, Manhattan, Napoleon Hill, and Lester Park, to show cause why the order should not be made permanent. Quote, Corianton, unquote. The work of the author named, Orestes Ubing, records the goings-on among the people who, according to the revelations of Mormonism, founded the first white civilization in the Western Hemisphere. The outfit's directors were Park, his brothers, Byron and Allen, and Arthur Bing. Part of the stock was to be sold to the public, and the rest retained by the promoters, the state says, unquote. By August of 1931, the Corianton Corporation was placed into receivership at the request of the stockholders. One investor, Flora B. Horn, accused Hill of malfeasance and sued for $5 million in damages. Despite all of this, the film Corianton, A Story of Unholy Love, was made and distributed to a limited audience. It did not do well with audiences outside of Utah, and the only known copy still to exist is in the Brigham Young University. It is also to be noted that Hill claimed to be an advisor to President Franklin D. Roosevelt, and it is also at this point in time that Hill claims that he coined the phrase, quote, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself," unquote. Again, there is no evidence to back up this claim. Florence divorces Oliver. There comes a time when even the most patient of women have had enough. Florence had enough of tolerating and financing Oliver's antics from a distance. She saw his schemes as basically leprechauns' pots of gold and rainbows that remained unfulfilled to his family and investors. He basically abandoned his family from day one of their marriage. He would show up from time to time, but he would show his temper to his sons more than anything else. But because divorce was illegal in the state of West Virginia at that time, Florence went to Florida. She stayed there for a week and won an uncontested divorce. Kentucky Tennessee Living at this point assumes that Florence did not receive any financial compensation in her divorce from Hill, as we could not find any source that states that she did. In next week's video, we will continue with the life of Napoleon Hill as he continues to fight for success in his life. Thank you. Kentucky Tennessee Living would like to thank you for watching our video series on the outstanding Appalachian people. Don't forget to hit that like button, as the more likes we receive, the more likely YouTube is to suggest our videos to other viewers. Also, to receive notice when we upload a new video, be sure to subscribe and click the bell notification button. We thank you for continuing to support Kentucky Tennessee Living as we are discovering the mysteries in Appalachian history.